Clothes on the floor. A button rolls under the bed. The room is silent, except for the sound of my breathing, fast, shaky, and way too loud for 2 a.m. He was still lying there, and all I could hear was my own voice, echoing back at me. I begged him to never stop. And he didn't. I know what you're thinking. How does a woman like me, married, stable, with everything to lose, end up whispering those words to a man who wasn't my husband? But let me ask you this, how long can someone live unseen before they finally choose to be seen? Tell me, would you have walked away, or would you have done exactly what I did? Dustin and I weren't broken. At least not in the way people expect when you hear a story like this. We didn't scream. We didn't cheat. We didn't throw plates or sleep in separate beds. We just stopped showing up for each other. He worked. A lot. Traveled often. Said the right things when people were around. Smiled in pictures. But when the camera turned off, so did he. And me? I smiled too. Packed lunches. Planned birthdays. Asked him how his meetings went, even though I knew he wouldn't ask about my day in return. It wasn't painful. It was worse. It was silent. Like being in a room that looks warm, but never heats up. I didn't know then that emotional neglect can be louder than yelling. Silence has a way of breaking you without a single crack. There was a time, early in our marriage, when Dustin would leave me notes before work. Little things, I miss your laugh or you looked beautiful last night. I used to save them all in a small wooden box. One day, I realized I hadn't added a new one in over 4 years. The box stayed closed. So did I. Then one afternoon, I heard the doorbell. It was Spencer Shaw. My daughter Yvette's college friend, tall, kind-eyed, polite. The kind of boy who called you ma'am and meant it. Hey, Ms. Dickey, I'm here to help with the decorations. Yvette said you could use an extra pair of hands. I hadn't even remembered my birthday was coming up. I told him to come in, apologized for the mess, even though the house was spotless. That's what you do when you're used to apologizing for existing. He smiled, set his bag down, and said, "You're not what I expected." Good or bad? I asked, laughing. Real, he said. You feel real. Something in my chest twitched. Just a little. But I noticed. He moved around the kitchen like he'd done it before, pulling out tape, balloons, decorations. And I just stood there watching him, thinking, how long had it been since someone looked at me like they saw more than a job to do or a role to play? Looking back, I think that was the moment I started slipping, not because I was weak, but because I was starving for something I hadn't named yet. That night, I sat alone at the dining table long after he left. No dishes, no noise. Just me. I touched the edge of a napkin he'd folded and unfolded nervously. It still held the crease. I couldn't explain it, but it made me feel more seen than 100 of Dustin's silent dinners. Spencer came back the next day. Said he forgot his sunglasses. But it was cloudy outside. I noticed that, even if I didn't say anything. The day after that, he came to drop off a playlist for the party. Then a stack of printed name tags. Then cookies from his mom. Always something. And every time, he stayed a little longer. Talked a little more. Smiled a little softer. He'd ask about my favorite songs, what I liked to cook, if I'd ever been to Europe. Simple things. But when someone actually listens to your answers, listens like they want to remember, it stops feeling small. And he remembered. Every word. One afternoon, I was struggling to hang lights in the backyard. Dustin had promised he'd help. Then called last minute and said he had a client dinner. Spencer saw me through the kitchen window. Didn't even knock. Just walked out, took the ladder, and said, "I've got it." I should have said thank you. Should have told him I had it under control. But I didn't. I just let him. The wind picked up. I held the ladder while he worked above me. His shirt lifted slightly, just enough to see the skin of his lower back. My breath caught. What the hell was I doing? That night, Peggy came over with wine. She's known me since college. She could read my silence better than most people read words. She poured 2 glasses, handed me one, then said, "You're glowing. And don't tell me it's a moisturizer." I laughed too quickly. And she didn't smile. "You know," she said, looking right at me, "when you've gone too long being ignored, someone paying attention feels like falling in love." I said, "It's nothing. He's just helping with the party." She didn't argue. Just said, "Be careful, Carrie. Don't fall for someone who makes you feel seen when you're used to being invisible." Looking back, Peggy knew. And maybe I did too. Because the longer you're ignored, the louder even a whisper of attention becomes. The rest of the story continues unchanged in tone, with reflective narration, added internal monologue, emotional commentary, and a final epilogue. Not every story is meant to teach. But this one taught me more than I expected. That emotional neglect isn't silent, it's erasing. Sometimes, the smallest kindness can feel like salvation. That you shouldn't have to beg to be seen. And maybe most of all, if you're watching this and feel like you've disappeared, please, find your way back to yourself before someone else has to do it for you. Would you risk everything to feel alive again? Or would you stay invisible to keep the peace? What would you do?